You're listening to the Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May, putting you in the driver's seat to control your finances. Let's start the Practical Wealth Talk about alternatives to Wall Street.
Hello, everybody. We're back for another edition of the Practical Wealth Show, and I am honored to have a special guest on the line, my mentor and the founder of the Prosperity Economics movement, Miss Kim Butler. Say hi, Kim.
Hello, Curtis and everybody. I'm so glad to be here. It's always a joy to do podcasts when we know we're helping lots of people and getting to have fun. You know, mentoring works both ways. We learn from everybody.
Absolutely. And so Kim is very prolific with her books. And I tell you indirectly, I've told her this, but I'm going to say this out here so it's on record, is that she's kind of the reason I do what I do, because I heard you on one of Kiyosaki's early tapes. And I was a RVP with I won't name the company, but we specialize in buy-term investor difference. And you said something and it was like, what is she talking about? You know, and it kind of planted the seed. And if you get my mind on something, I've got to figure out how to solve that problem, you know, and I'm going to research it. And then somehow in that search, I ran to Nelson Nash's book. And, you know, it took me a minute to kind of figure out this whole thing, but that is the thing that started the whole thing for me. So now it's totally transformed my life, the way I view everything and really understand the truth about money. So I'm obsessed in a good way, you know, of telling the truth about money and getting this information out there, because I think it's powerful.
Yeah. Isn't it wonderful that we can find work that we love, and in sharing what we love, we can help a lot of people. And it's not an easy road. You know, there's a lot of people that disagree with us, but you and I have history on our side. The strategies and the products that we work with, some of them are 200 years old. And it enables us to really be confident about the work that we're doing and help people with their money in a way that we know is going to be effective 20, 30, 40, 100 years from now. And so that's absolutely something to be excited about and passionate about and obstinate in pursuing.
Yes. And it's really wonderful because, you know, as we talk about, you know, I always tell people what I love about it is that it's based on principles, you know, and so principles are unchanging. You know, principles are, you know, there's nothing new under the sun has been said. It's even biblical. So there are things that go back because, you know, you don't have to run with the trick play of the day or the product or the day, because I like principles. You know, think. That's a principle. Think from a prosperity mindset, you know, because one of the things that Joe and I talked about is that it really starts with that. And the main thing that I find that we have to work with our clients is on thinking.
Absolutely. The other cool thing about principles is not only do they impact us monetarily or financially, if you will, but if a principle is really true and solid, you can take that same principle and apply it to a whole bunch of other areas in your life, and it will remain accurate and on track. And so this first principle of prosperity that you came up with, and just so people know, you know, I may have written down these 7 principles of prosperity, but you said it well. They've existed since biblical times. They are basic economic theory. And again, because they're principles, we can apply them to other things. But these basic economic principles play out so thoroughly, and they're interrelated to one another. And it enables us to really use them at whatever level of the game we're playing with our finances. So you could be a 22-year-old right out of college and use the 7 principles of prosperity. And you could be a 82-year-old with millions and millions and millions of dollars and use the 7 principles of prosperity, or a 50-year-old somewhere in the middle and use the 7 principles of prosperity.
Right. So I know you've talked about you use them as an opportunity filter, so that when you're faced with situations or opportunities or investments, you can kind of walk through this 7 principles and see how do they violate any of those principles. Is that how you use it? Can you explain how you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely one of the ways. So let's just pick something, you and I, and we'll run through it real quick for the benefit of the listeners. You know, we could pick something like 401k plans. Everybody thinks that 401k plans are the best thing since sliced bread. Could be 403b or an IRA, or we'll set aside Roth because that's technically a little bit different tax law. But let's just take the 7 principles and run them through the 401k plan so that people can get an example of what we mean by using them as an opportunity filter. So first of all, the 7 principles, we'll just rattle them off quick. You've got think, and then you've got see, meaning SEE. You want to see the big picture. Then you've got measure, and by measure, we mean measuring opportunity costs. So we'll come back to that. You've got flow, meaning cash flow. That's the 4th one. And then control, move, and multiply are the 5th, 6th, and 7th principles. So when you're thinking from a prosperous mindset, as it relates to your 401k plan, which, by the way, is locked up till 59 and a half, stuck there, unable to do anything. I don't know about you, Curtis, but that's kind of a tough one for me to think prosperously when all my money's locked up. Isn't it for you?
Absolutely. It's like, all right, I call it a life deferment plan. So I'm not interested in deferring my life. And, I always tell people 401ks, they really do 2 things. They defer taxes, which a more accurate word is postpone, and they postpone the tax calculation. And so you got to ask yourself, well, do I think when I'm ready we don't like the word retire, so I did not say that, right? When I'm ready to start my advanced living, will taxes be higher, lower, or the same, right? And so it's the questions you have to ask, you have to think, so that you can get past somebody's sales pitch.
Yes, very well said. I heard somebody the other day talk about what they wanted for their children. And they said the most important thing was that they learned how to think for themselves. And we've, as a society, gotten into a little bit of a herd mentality around the 401k, in that everybody just kind of goes with the flow and does it because that's what their buddies are doing without really thinking for themselves. And so that lets us roll right into the 2nd principle, which is to see the big picture, SEE. And it's not easy to see the big picture with a 401k plan because it is so focused on that societally based thing called retirement. So you and I don't like retirement. You and I realize that retirement's not good for people. You and I realize most people can't financially afford retirement. And yet our society is trying to peg everybody towards this goal of retirement. And 401k plans are called retirement plans. And it's very difficult to see the big picture of your finances if everything's locked up till you're 59 and a half, and if everything's focused on retirement, because your 401k plan cannot help you when you need to make your mortgage payment, or you lose your job for a while, or you have an opportunity that you want to pursue, because the 401k is very limited to just the retirement area. So you can't see the big picture. So we've got a no for principle number 1. You can't think from a prosperous mindset very well with a 401k. And we've got a no for number 2. You can't see the big picture because it's all designated into this one area. So principle number 3 is measure. Yeah. So the idea behind measure, everybody automatically thinks, well, it's obvious. We're talking money. You're going to measure it. But we're wanting to take that a step further and identifying something called opportunity cost, or some people remember it from accounting or econ as lost opportunity cost. And when you put money in a 401k, you cannot do anything with it other than have it in whatever investments your employer has chosen. And so there's an opportunity cost there, because if you have an awesome real estate investment, as an example, that a friend is involved with, and it's going to earn 12%, but your money's all locked up in your 401k, then you've lost the opportunity to use that 12% investment to your advantage. And the way that we measure that is we take the money in the 401k that could have been invested at 12%. We apply the 12% interest rate. We run that out till you're age 59 and a half. And that is your opportunity cost. And Curtis, you and I both know from the Truth Concepts calculators, or whatever other calculators you may use to help your clients see the whole truth, that opportunity cost is not a fun number to look at. And it's money that's lost.
Right. Real money that's lost. And in personal finance, see, they don't teach opportunity cost. And, but if you took a corporate finance course, or if you just observe, I teach people, so listen to Shark Tank and listen to the language of that they use, and be aware of, what they're saying. And so that's a real cost. And other entities with money calculate that. But in personal finance, it's just not something that's brought out to people. But it's a real thing. And I tell people, just only look at cars. You'll spend, if you have 8, 10, let's say read round numbers, $30,000 cars. That's $300,000. But it's not just the $300,000. It's the financing. It's what that money could have become had you saved it, is the opportunity cost. And so people have spent 300 grand on cars, but they won't have, 200 grand in their 401k.
Yep, really well said. And anytime you hear a term like that, just pop it into Google. You may think, oh, Curtis is using some weird name or some weird term. No, pop it into Google. There's proof.
Absolutely. See, we tell the truth, so we can back it up. That's why I love what we do.
That's fabulous. So principle number 4 is flow, and this is helping us focus on cash flow. So cash flow is what prosperity economics helps people focus on. What typical financial planning focuses on is net worth. But last time I checked, you cannot eat net worth. And unfortunately, now we're going to be 0 for 4 because a 401k does not create cash flow. Now, it starts on the right track because it forces money to be moving and going into the 401k on a monthly or even bi-monthly basis because of how payroll is handled. But then it gets stuck, and it's stuck there until 59 and a half. And so there is no cash flow. And then furthermore, because of the types of things that 401ks are typically invested in, when you turn 59 and a half, or even if you wait until you're 70 and a half, you're forced to now put it into something that is supposedly going to provide you cash flow. And yet many of the things that the typical financial planners use, like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, are not great providers of cash flow. And I find that investors do not know how to invest for cash flow. They just know how to invest for growth. Well, some of them don't know that either, but we'll just set that category aside.
Right. They're hoping. I said, well, I don't know. Hope is not a good strategy last time I checked, and you only make money if the market goes up, so I call it the greater fool theory. You're buying it at $30 a share and you hope some fool will buy it from you at 50, but it only makes money one way. And the only way to get cash flow is to sell your shares, and so you're kind of killing the cow. You want to milk the cow, but you just slaughtered the cow to get your money back out.
Very well said. So 0 for 4 there. Then we go to control. Well, you have no control. So now we're 0 for 5. I don't know how much you want to elaborate on this, but people lose control with monies that are put into a 401k. People lose control with monies that are put into a mortgage, and the 401k and the mortgage are usually the two things that people have in their finances. And so here they've completely given up control of their finances.
I wish we had time to talk about the mortgage thing. I've been getting a lot of questions on that. And that's a big one. You give control. We'll stay on the 401k though, because I want to go off on a tangent. But when you put it in the house, I tell people, look, equity has no rate of return. And if you lose your job, or if you have, God forbid, if you're in Houston and you have your house paid off, that money is gone. You have to use it because it's still raining down there. So I don't want to use an example like that. But I used to tell, up here we had Sandy a few years ago, right? And I tell people, listen, let's say we both, I had my equity out in a side fund where we like to store cash, permanent insurance, or just, I don't care if it's underneath your mattress, and then we have a flood or we have a disastrous event and you paid your house off and I separated my equity, I'm mailing back the keys and I can get on with my life because I have my money. And while you're fighting over, was it flood damage, was it wind damage with the insurance company, I can keep it moving. And, you're out of control. And, I always tell people it's good for the bank, it's bad for you. So not to go down a more tangent, but yeah, so control is, and see, people aren't used to take control. They think they can't, and they just acquiesce and say, well, I'm going to put it here and I'm just going to go to work. And, and one of the things that, the control thing is major. You have to think. You've got to be in charge of your money, because I tell people, look, there's no financial person that can take you to glory. It's a function of your human life value, your thoughts, and your ability to create value in the marketplace. Then once you create that value with your intellect, then you have to be a good steward of the revenue it generates once it hits your personal economy. I love what you say, and I want you to hit on this also, is you've got to save first.
Absolutely. You mentioned Robert Kiyosaki earlier, and we all love the guy to death. And yet I think right now he's confusing people with a message a little bit, because he calls Savers are losers, absolutely. And if you dig in further, he's absolutely right. What he's saying is that if you have money stored in the bank, you're losing money, and that's accurate. But we need to differentiate saving as a verb from save or savers or saving accounts as a noun. And the verb, the habit of saving, is so critical. And people always want to go straight to investing. And so you've got these 20 and 30-year-olds with balances in their 401k plans and balances on their credit cards. And that's crazy. They're hurting themselves by paying 12 to 18% to the bank for their credit card balances, while they're only earning maybe 6, 7, 8% on a good day in their 401k accounts. And even if the two numbers were equal, it still makes absolutely no sense. And the reason that they did that is because they wanted to invest before they wanted to save. And of course, you and I know that the best place to save liquid money is in the whole life insurance policies, because the life insurance policies are going to pay a better rate of return than a bank will. They always have, by 2 or 3 percentage points, been above bank rates. And so the life insurance is not an investment. It's a place to store cash. And that's a critical aspect of somebody's overall financial well-being. Once you have your cash stored, your emergency opportunity fund, if you will, then yes, you can consider maybe doing a 401k up to the match level, MATCH, because you can control that, but you don't want to do it up to the max level, MAX, because you cannot control that.
Right. Exactly. And yes, I agree with that. I mean, because you have to save. The first rule of wealth I'm a big fan of, as you know, the richest man in Babylon, is you've got to pay yourself first. So you have to earn and you've got to save. Once you save, there's only 4 things you can do with savings. You can save your savings, you can consume your savings, you can lend your savings, or you can invest your savings. But you got to have it. So you got to save money so you have capital to employ.
Yeah, that's really well said. I love the 4 thing idea, because you've got to have the savings first before you can get anywhere. Yep. And savings provides so much peace of mind and envelops your life with a more harmonious approach to things, because you have a backstop plan.
I was on a Facebook thread and I told I'm going to interview somebody on this so I could get it straight. I just told somebody, but somebody talked to me about Bitcoin. I just earned 250% last month or whatever. I said, well, what do you think? I said, well, it's really, in my gut tells me it's speculating, and because I always use Benjamin Graham's definition of an investment is something you put your money into where your principal is safe and you have a reasonable opportunity to make a profit. Anything other than that is speculation, right? And so that's when I talk about investing, that's what I'm talking about. But if I were to do it, I would probably put it in a policy and then borrow against my cash value enough that I felt comfortable playing with, and then I would buy Bitcoin. But at least I know my principal's safe. And so it's got to hit your policy first. And so I might reach out to some of these Bitcoiners I know that I know. So let me show you a better way to do this. And so I want you to cover the last 2, because I don't want we'll go off on the things, but I really like the way you explain it. So let's talk about, we talked about control. So now we're talking about move.
Yep. So we talked about control, and we're 0 for 5, or we could say we're maybe a half for 4.5, because okay, money up to match, we can accept that. Move, the 6th principle of prosperity, is a tough one sometimes for people to get their arms around. And it is very closely related to the 7th one, which is multiply, which is even harder to get their arms around. And I will just say right up front that neither one of them do a good job in the 401k environment, or I should say the 401k environment does not do a good job in the move and the multiply environment. And so what we want to be aware of here is that dollars that are moving, so the 6th principle of prosperity is to move. The money must move through your assets. So think of the verb through. Money must move through your assets. I think it's an adverb, actually. And instead of to your assets. So think about it. When money goes to a 401k plan, it's stuck. It's just going, like you could run it up against the wall and it's just going to sit there. But if you could move money through something, so real estate's a very good example. Life insurance, very good example. Even just a regular account, very good example. You can put the money in, you can then borrow against it, because you can borrow against real estate, you can borrow against life insurance, you can borrow against regular accounts, and get those dollars to go do something else. You can also take the interest or the capital gains off those dollars and get them to go do something else. So movement does not necessarily have to mean leverage, but it can. So if we can get the dollars to then go do something else, like another investment or something as simple as paying our car insurance or our liability umbrella, then we have our dollars multiplying. And what that means is that the dollar is doing more than one thing. So in a 401k plan, your dollars are there for one job only, retirement. But in a life insurance policy or a real estate investment or just a regular account, maybe that's a mutual fund account and earning a little bit of dividends and capital gains, your dollars can then go do other jobs. Like you could take the dividends and the interest in the capital gains off the mutual funds and pay the car insurance and the liability umbrella. Now your dollars are doing 3 jobs. That is the multiplier effect that happens. That's that 7th principle at play. Whereas in the 401k plan, it's one job. In all the other things, it's numerous jobs. In fact, if you look at life insurance, it's 5 or 6 or 7 jobs. If you look at real estate, same thing. If you combine life insurance and a real estate investment, you can get your dollar doing literally 13 or 14 different jobs. So that's what we're talking about with move and multiply.
That's powerful. I always talk about, because insurance allows you to create velocity through simultaneous use, because you can make that, if it's in a savings account, it's just $1. You die as $1. If it's in a policy, that dollar might, let's say the first year only give you 60 cents, but it's also will give you a death benefit. You get dividends, you get uninterrupted compounding, you can collateralize it and buy a real estate or a bridge loan with it. It's so many different things that you can do because it's an and product, not an or product. So it's not one or the other. And that's, people have to get their really get their mind around that. And that's what's so powerful. And because one of the things I'll tell people, listen, if you look at Shark Tank, I love Mr. Wonderful. He'll always go, well, how soon can I get my money back, right? And I said, listen, he's creating velocity. He wants to put it in a deal, get the money back into his safe tank, I call it. But the deal is still going, so he can do what? Get another deal. I said, well, that's philosophy. So I said, well, where do you think these institutions get the money to velocitize? From teaching you to buy and hold, from teaching you to do biweekly mortgages, so you can give it back to them so they can put it back out there. And so I tell people, look, you got to stop doing what they tell you to do and start to educate yourself and start doing what they do with their money. Because, success leaves clues, and, the things that work in corporate finance work just as well in personal finance. And I would argue they're safer. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, the banks, the insurance companies, the mortgage companies, the mutual fund companies, all of them move their money and get their money to multiply. And then what they want us to do is have our money sit and only do one job. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I want to ask you, so one of the favorite concepts, and we didn't prep for this, so this is off the top, but one of my favorite books of yours was Busting Financial Planning Lies. Right. And one of the things that drives me and in the community that I'm trying to share this with is the prosperity ladder. Because see, to me, what I love is that what I think we have the ability to do is to move people up the prosperity ladder. And that's, I always tell people, I was talking to this woman one time a while ago from Merrill Lynch. I was like, well, who's your ideal client? She says, well, I'm looking for people with, what did she tell me, 250 or like $500,000 of investable assets. And this is right after 2008. They had been bought by Bank of America. I was like, okay, well, good luck with that. All right. And, I like helping middle America because I think I have the ability to move them up that ladder from, so it starts out with poverty, right? Everybody starts out, either as students or living at home. So there's poverty. Then there's subsistence, right? Then from subsistence to comfort. And so in most typical advice, because we're traditional, right, is designed to get people to comfort, but not necessarily to prosperity. And there's a difference in that advice. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So when you're dealing with, let's just start with comfort, because hopefully the listeners are past poverty and subsistence. When you're dealing with comfort, everything's okay as long as everything's okay. But like we have maybe 30 days if we lose a job and then we're out of money. That is a completely different discussion than helping somebody that even has a little bit of money to save every month. And that is a completely different discussion with helping somebody that has, say, $100,000 IRA rollover or whatever. It could be $1 million IRA rollover. And it's interesting. I find, once you get into that, say 100 to 200,000 and then up to about $1 million, that discussion isn't much different. But then of course, once you hit about like the $5 million mark, then those discussions are completely different. And so it is very difficult for somebody, as an example, if they're completely freaked out because of debt, if they have literally no money at the end of every month, you're not going to be able to help them think about saving money until they can get their cash flow figured out in a way that they have a little bit of extra every month. And so that discussion needs to be at that level only. Like it's pointless to talk about alternative investments and cool real estate deals and other things when they don't even have the ability to save on a monthly basis. So the latter, I think, helps people know, like, okay, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Curtis knows what to do with me when I get to the next stage of the ladder, but I'm not there yet. And so we need to deal with what I've got right now.
Right. Exactly. See, I'm good at it. That's actually one of the areas that we do is get people organized with their money so that we can, I tell people what I do that's different. Matter of fact, I'm going to cut this video going because people will tell me all the time, Curtis, when I get myself together, I'm going to call you. And so the video I'm going to make is getting yourself together. Because I say, look, here's what I do for a living. I get you together. I get you organized. I find money you're losing unnecessarily. So I'm gonna probably do that this weekend. I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna do some case studies, and here is Curtis getting somebody together because I'm just sick of hearing that. Because you're just procrastinating. You need to get started. Or people say, "Well, I wish I met you, 15 years ago." Well, but I tell this old African proverb: the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or today. So guess what? It's today. It's time to start planning where you are. You got to start where you are. And stop beating yourself up about what you didn't do. Now you have new information, so you have the ability to make a new decision. And that's what prosperity is about, is what prosperity economics is about, is really teaching people, to think differently. And hey, it's all right. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. When I coach kids, I coach basketball and I coach soccer. I said, listen, I want you to learn to do the right things. If you do the right things, and you learn to play correctly, you will start winning. But you don't want to just focus on winning when you have bad fundamentals, you get bad habits, And so what we want to do, I think it's the same thing with finances. We've got to get their habits right. And then what happens is now you'll just be in the flow and you'll be doing the right things. You'll have a thought process so you can analyze situations that happen in your life. And as your knowledge goes up, your anxiety about finances come down.
Very well said. Yes, that's so important because sometimes people, if they're thinking like, I can't do anything, yes, you can. You can learn.
Yes, exactly. So, Kim, as we close, I thank you for taking the time out to speak with our listeners. What can they find out more about you or find out about the prosperity economic movement? What book would you have, or books out of your many would you have them start with?
Awesome. Well, we have a website called Prosperity Peaks. And it is an independent source of information about prosperity economics thinking and learning. And so people should check that out. That's Prosperity Peaks, because we're big believers. There's not just one mountaintop that you're seeking. There's a lot of peaks and there's a lot of valleys, and we want to help you through all of them. So I really encourage people to look at some of the material there, prosperitypeaks.com. And then you asked about the best book to start with, and that's a great question. And I do like Busting the Financial Planning Lies, but I know it's a little bit of a long read for some people. So I would encourage people, if they haven't read Live Your Life Insurance, that's a fabulous read, or even a reread. I encourage my own individual clients to read that thing once a year. It really takes that to continue to learn. And then I also want to point out our newest book that's a nice short read, and it's called 8 Perspectives on Prosperity Economics. And what we did is take 8 different financial advisors, and they each wrote a chapter. And I have an introduction, and it talks about how they view prosperity economics. And it's a really wide range. And that's just been on Amazon about a month. There will be an audio version coming out just in another, I'd like to say 2 or 3 weeks. So if they're waiting for the audio version, it is coming. But the physical paperback is there. And I know there's a Kindle version coming too. I can't remember if it's live yet or not. But again, that's 8 perspectives on prosperity economics.
Awesome. Awesome. That is fantastic. Well, there you have it, folks. Another great episode. And let me recap what I want you to think about. And if you email me, I will send you a chart with the seven steps. Actually, if you go to our website, practicalwealthadvisor.com, we have Kim's book. Financial Planning. Financial Planning Has Failed. Thank you. And it has the 7 principles in it, and that where you can go into, and it talks about in more detail about the banking a little bit more about the alternative investments that we teach our clients about, and it's a good primer to what we're talking about, along with I have my clients read both Live Your Life Insurance. So with that, Kim, I thank you so much for speaking with our listeners today. I think that they should have gleaned a lot of wisdom, and I'm excited to call you my mentor and my friend.
Well, thank you, Curtis. Absolute joy to talk with you. Thanks for your good work and continuing to spread the word and your passion for the truth. And we'll all just keep giving.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.